Evening. Hope you're all doing well. Today we're learning Maseches Nazir, Daf Tes Vav. We'll be starting at the Mishnah 6 lines down, and we will be finishing with the Perek on the top of Tes Zayin Amud Aleph. And today we're going to be speaking about one clean sugya from Mishnah to the end of Perek. In our previous Mishnayos, we've been discussing what happens when you have intersecting Nazirios. I accepted one starting on day 20. I accepted another one starting today for 100 days. And in the previous Mishnayos, we did not allow for two Nazirios to overlap. We said that they had to be interrupted. However, we're going to see an exception to that rule now, and that is that when the two Nazirios end at the same time, then we allow for there to be an overlap with two Nazirios. Let's get started with the Mishnah. Tes Vav Amud Aleph 6 lines down. A person says that they want to accept Nazirus upon themselves for when they have a child. That's promise number 1. And number 2, V'Nazir Mea Yom. Okay, so he starts out with the one that's his second promise, which is the 100-day promise, because he's got nothing stopping him from doing it. He doesn't know when the baby's coming. They didn't have delivery dates. So what happens? He starts his 100 days. Nolad lo ben, while he's in the midst of his 100-day commitment of Nazirus. Ad shivim, if the baby is born up to and including day 70, lo hifsid klum, no problem at all. No problem at all. All you need to do is just keep counting, and then you've done 70 days. You get a twofer. Your first 70 days count as 70 of your 100 days. The next 30 days count as 2 different overlapping concurrent Nazirios. The last 30 days of 100 and the total of 30 days for the ben, for the Naziris, for the child.
And it's one set of korbanos?
No, it'll be multiple sets of korbanos, I believe. I think that's the case. We don't discuss that here, but I believe that's the case. But that's only up to day 70. What if you surpass 70 such that the balance of your 100 is no longer 30 days where your hair is going to grow long enough? And then you're going to be pushed off with the korbanos, says the Gemara, la'achar shivim, soser shivim she'en tiglachas pachos mishloshim yom. If in fact the baby's born on day 80 into 100 days, then what's left of the 100? Only 20. That doesn't work. Then we need to say that you're soser. You're not soser all of them. You really just end up needing to wait till day 30 to get your haircut. Some Rishonim remove these last few words of she'en tiglachas pachos mishloshim yom. We're not going to go into that sugya. The Gemara now opens with a comment of Rav, and this comment of Rav will take us until the end of the parak. His comment is short, but the analysis of the comment is lengthy. What is Rav's comment? We're a third of the way down on Tes Vav Amud Aleph at the open of the Gemara. Amar Rav, Yom Shivim Ola Lekan Ulekan. Wow, do these words seem simple? And wow, are they not so simple? The 70th day, remember, you're 70 days into your second neder, which is that you have the baby on day 70. So when the baby is born on day 70, that day counts both as day 70 for the 100. It also counts as day 1 of the new 30-day Naziris for the son. Now that actually causes for a problem, because if you do the math, you'll find out that the conclusion will be that the son's Nazirus will end a day before the other Nazirus. Because since day 70 is day 1 and day 70, so when you add the 30 days to the 1, you're done on day 30. The days are staggered. They're off by just 1 day at the end. So Gemara is going to get into the details here about really why did our Mishnah say Ad Shivim? That's not actually the right number, because even had they both been on 71, the conclusion would still have been day 100. It would have still been fine. So we need to get into what this means, what he calls here Ola Lakan Ulakan, that the 70th day functions as both the previous count and for the future count. Tanan, let's ask our first question. We had said in our Mishnah, no ladlo ad shivim lo hifsid klum. What do you mean, asks the Gemara, that what does it mean in our Mishnah when it says lo hifsid klum? That's not true. V'sal kadaitach ola lekan ulekan iskure miskar. You actually did benefit from something. And what's that? That your Nazirus is 1 day shorter than you thought. Because of this din of ola lekan ulekan. Therefore, the Naziris for that a person accepted upon themselves for the ben, that will end a day earlier than the 100. You've gained something. What do you mean lo hifsid klum? That's the wrong language. You've gained something. It's not lo hifsid, you gained. Ella says the Gemara, you're right. Bidin, who really it should be the case to lo lisnei ad shivim. The reisha of our Mishnah should not, that's not the reisha. That line of our Mishnah of Ad Shivim should not be there, only because of the end. Umishum de Katani Seifa, Achar Shivim Soser Shivim, Katani Reisha Shivim. But really 70 was, that number shouldn't have been there. It was only used in the Mishnah for symmetry, a terribly confusing symmetry. I sometimes wonder as we plow through Shas, as we've been doing, like sometimes we say, the Mishnah needs symmetry. Ad Hechan. Like how far do we go for the sake of symmetry? To the point that it's confusing? And the answer is yes. That is the answer because it's easier to memorize Mishnayos that way. Okay, that was question number one. Question number two, I already foreshadowed slightly, a little bit more than halfway down on Tes Vav Amud Aleph. Tashma, Miseifa. We have a problem with the end of our Mishnah. We had said, Nolad Achar Shivim, Soser Shivim. The only way that our Mishnah makes sense is if we understand as follows. My Achar, what does it mean after 70? It must mean Achar, not 70, and not even Achar 70, but 72. Aval achar mamish mai, if it was only 1 day later, if it was day 71, hachanami de lo sasar. There too, we still have 30 days left of our count. No reason, says the Gemara, why both of these Nazirios can't happen at the same time, because you'll have 30 days of hair growth. No problem. Ihachi, if that's true, why does the Mishnah say 70 and not 71? My area detani no ladad shivim lohifsiklum. Afilu achar shivim nami ha'amras lo sasar. It should all work out that on day 71 it should have said ad shivim ve'achas. Why doesn't it say ad shivim ve'achas? Ella shmami no achar mamish. It is in fact talking about day 71, and our Mishnah is not like Rav. And v'chein masnitzan l'Rav shmami no. This line of v'chein masnitzan l'Rav sounds like our Mishnah is like Rav. That's incorrect. That's not what it means. Take a look at Rashi or the Rivan, you can look, and the Balei Atosos, they all say the same thing. 12 lines from the bottom on the inner margin, it says, V'chein masnisan l'Rav. Here's how the Rivan understands this. V'chein le'inyan zeh, kasha masnisan l'Rav shmamina. That we have this double question on Rav, that it must be that it's talking about day 71, it's Achar Shivim, and therefore that according to Rav says that they'd be Soser. Rav says that it only works if they end at the same time. That's not correct, and therefore we reject the Shita of Rav. We don't really reject the Shita of Rav, it's more that our Mishnah doesn't align with the Shita of Rav. So who then does Rav Shita align with? And the Gemara asks this question 6-7 lines from the bottom of the page on Tes Vav Amud Aleph. V'Rav keman amar l'shmaisei. According to whom does Rav say his line? Says the Gemara, it must be Aliba de Abba Shaul. Abba Shaul the Tana, it must be that Rav aligns with him. Where do we see this idea of Ola Lekan Ulekan, that 1 day can really be 2 days? It'll be the previous half of 1 day will be A, and half of the rest of that day will be B. How does that work out? The Tanya, the Brisa writes, Hakover es meso Rahman al-Litzlan, a person buries a loved one, Shlosha Yamim Kodon L'Regel. If the person gets buried 3 days prior to a regel, but lamimenu gzera shiva, then as we know, shiva gets interrupted. We learned about this in Maseches Moed Katan. What if, says the Tanakama, shmona yamim kodem l'regel? What if there are 8 days that are prior to the regel, 7 for shiva, and 1 to at least begin the tkufa of shloshim, and then it gets interrupted, but lamimenu gzera shloshim? So you already fulfilled your shiva because it's 8 days before the regel. So the 7 days before your yotzazai, you did the full Shiva, but because we have that 8th day, that 1 extra day, therefore you were Yotzei Shloshim, even though it was only 1 day, and the holiday interrupts it. And as a side din, Umotor l'saper erev haregel, v'im lo siper erev haregel, asur l'saper achar haregel. A machlokas in regards to haircutting, that as it relates to our sugya is a tangential point. And now we're on the top of Tes Vav Amud Beis, and we only saw the shita of the Tanakama, but we had said that Rav was like Abba Shaul. Let's see the shita of Abba Shaul. Abba Shaul Omer, he disagrees with the haircutting piece. Afilu lo sipar kodem haregel, mutar l'saper achar haregel, shekeshem shemitzvah shlosha mibatelas gzera shiva. Just like we know that the first 3 days that you keep, they are going to be interrupted when the regel comes. Kach mitzvah shiva mibatelas gzera shloshim. So too, if you have 7 days, not 8, if you have 7 days before the shloshim, the regel begins, it's mevatel gzera shloshim. Why? This is the machlokas Tanakama and Abba Shaul. The Tanakama was of the opinion that if 8 days were before the regel, then you no longer continue your shloshim after the regel. But if only 7 days, according to the Tanakama, was there, then you do keep shloshim. Abba Shaul argues. Abba Shaul argues and says 7 days is enough. If you have 7 days before a regel, then there's no shloshim even afterwards. My time at Abba Shaul. And now we see precedents for the Shita of Rav. Rav said that the 70th day of our case in the Mishnah was Ola Lakan Ulakan. And Abba Shaul seems to hold exactly the same way, but in another context. It says the Gemara, not necessarily. Why not? Because the Gemara creates a chakira between the world of Nazirus and the world of and the world of Avelus. Says the Gemara 7 lines down. Dilma adkan lo ka'amar Abba Shaul. Maybe the only time Abba Shaul says that the 7th day is Ola Lakan Ulakan is Ela be'Avelus Zayin Derabanan. That's because Shiva is only a Din Derabanan. That's why he holds it's Ola Lakan Ulakan, that the 7th day can have its teeth both in the Shiva and after the Shiva, and therefore that's why in our case of Avelus, he says we only need 7 days before the Regel in order to ruin the Shloshim, because the morning of the 7th day will count as the 7th day, and the afternoon of the 7th day will count as the 8th day. Fine and good. Aval, maybe Abba Shaul would disagree, but Ben Nazir D'Oraisa, look, he may not say that. He may say we need a full 7 days, and therefore we have no raya from Abba Shaul, even though he says explicitly that the 7th day is Ola Lakan Ulakan, but maybe that doesn't function as a precedence for Rav. Rav was talking about a case that was a din deoraisa, a case of nazirios that bleed into one another. And here we're talking about derabanan, which is avelus and shiva and shloshim, which is definitely derabanan. The only time the Rishonim discuss, the only time that we have a case where there is any avelus is deoraisa is possibly the first day, provided that the misa and the burial were done the first day, but otherwise Shiva is all derabanan, and therefore apples and oranges can't compare them. So therefore we still don't know who Rav holds like. We know Rav doesn't hold like the author of our Mishnah, and now we know that we cannot conclude and say that Rav holds like Abba Shaul. So who then does Rav base his shita on? Ela Rav, says the Gemara, a quarter of the way down on Tesvav Amud Beis, Ela Rav de Amar ki Reb Yossi. What does Reb Yossi say? This is about the world of Zav and Zava. As we know, a woman who sees 3 re'ios of Zava in a row, she becomes what's called a Zava Gedola. She needs to hold of Sheva Nekim, and she also must bring Korbanos. Now, the Rishonim, the Rashi and the Rambam have a big machlokas about this in Hilchos Nida. The calendar used to basically work that from the day that a woman got her period, there would be a set of days called her Yemei Nida. Any blood seen in those days were considered blood of Nida. And then after that period of time, there were Yemei Ziva. And during the Yemei Ziva, any blood that she would see during those times would be Yemei Ziva. So during her Yemei Ziva, if she saw 3 re'ios 3 days in a row, Monday morning, Tuesday morning, Wednesday morning, she is now considered a Zava Gdola, and she is obligated to bring Korbanos and wait Sheva Nekim. As a reminder, the reason now, today, why we wait Sheva Nekim, when a woman is in Nida, why we wait Sheva Nekim, is not because of Hilchos Nida. Mida Oraisa, a woman who sees Dam, she has to go to the mikveh after 7 days Dam. But that's not why we have Sheva Nekim. Sheva Nekim is not, that's totally not what we're talking about. Sheva Nekim is in addition to the menstruation. It's totally much longer. The only reason we keep that today is because we don't know what the woman's calendar would be nowadays. We don't know if that calendar would be the first 11 days need the next 18 days are considered Zava. We don't have that calendar. So because of a suffix that she might be a Zava, therefore we keep Sheva Nekim. Otherwise we wouldn't.
How much time does Zava Ketana?
It's called Shomeres Yom Keneged Yom, which we're going to learn about right now.
Okay.
So if she sees, let's say she sees on Monday morning she is a Zava, so then she keeps 1 day against that day that she saw. So the next day she's Tameya. Then she can go to the mikveh and she's fine. And if she sees 2, also Shomeres Yom Keneged Yom, so 2 days of clean. But once she sees 3, she's done 4, and that's Sheva Nekim plus Korbanos. And that's in fact what the Gemara says right here. Detanya Rav Yossi Omer. In a case of Shomeres Yom Keneged Yom, it's Erev Pesach, and a woman is Shomeres Yom Keneged Yom. She's in her Yemei Ziva, she sees a Re'iyah or 2, and she's not yet a Zava Gedola. And she thinks that she's not going to see any more blood. So what's the assumption? She'll be fine by tomorrow. Right? Shomeres Yom Keneged Yom. She saw, and she'll be able to eat from the Korban Pesach. So they include her bechabura, and says the Gemara sheshachtu. They did the shchitas Pesach, v'zarku aleha v'sheni shela, and then they made her pure. Ve'achar kach rasa. She goes to the mikvah. She's all fine and good, and now she's stuck because she just saw her 3rd re'iyah. And now she's a Zava Gedola. Harezu ena ocheles. She's not allowed to eat the Korban Pesach. Uptura milasos Pesach sheni. However, this is an interesting bifurcation. She's not required to do Pesach Sheni. When is Pesach Sheni required? When someone was Tmeya the entire time that she was eligible to bring the Korban Pesach. Here, she was under the assumption of Shomeres Yom Keneged Yom. They brought the Korban under the assumption that she'd be fine because Shomeres Yom Keneged Yom was a short period of time. Then she saw another Re'iyah that made her Tmeya for 7 days. And says the Gemara two things. On the one hand, Eino Ochela, she cannot eat the Korban Pesach. And at the same time, since she wasn't Tmeya the whole time, because the first day that she saw her Zava discharge, that only made her Shomer Yom Keneged Yom still eligible for the Korban Pesach. Since she was, in theory, eligible for the Korban Pesach when it was Nishchat, therefore, no need for Meiser Sheni, for Pesach Sheni.
Does that have to be 3 days Beretza?
3 days Beretza.
So if it's Monday, Tuesday, and then Thursday, it's still Shomer Yom.
Shomer Yom Keneged Yom.
Uh-huh.
So that's not what happened here. This was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but on Monday, they shechted the Korban Pesach under the assumption she could eat it, and then she saw 2 more in a row, and then she became a Zava Gedola. But because she was still a Shomer Yom Keneged Yom, she does not have to redo the Korban Pesach because she was technically Tahora, or theoretically Tahora at that time. My time of Rabbi Yossi. Why is it that we say this? It must be that in the morning, when this woman woke up and she was only a Shomer Yom Keneged Yom, what was that morning of the day for her? Shomer Yom Keneged Yom. And then when she sees her Re'iyah, what is it for her? Zava Gedola. So that's what the Gemara says, my time of Rabbi Yossi, La Mishum de Kasavar Mixas HaYom Kekulo. That part of the day was Zava Ketana, and part of the day was Zava Gdola. Skip the next 4 words. And Mikan Ulehaba Humetame. She only becomes Tmeya from seeing the third Re'iyah, but prior to the third Re'iyah, she had a different status. That's Rav. That's Rav. Why? What did Rav say? The 70th day is Ola Lakan Ulakan. The 70th day, it has a little bit of today and a little bit of tomorrow. What about the Zava Ketana, who became a Zava Gdola? In the morning, before she was a Zava Gdola, she was a Zava Ketana. And even though the 3 days were Beritzifus, and she became a Zava Gdola for 3 days in a row, we still look at the morning as Zava Ketana and the afternoon as a Zava Gdola. Haraya, she doesn't have to do Pesach Sheni because she was technically eligible that morning as a Shomer Yom Keneged Yom. So we see Rav has precedence in the Tanaim, and that would be Rabbi Yossi. Halfway down, the Gemara says on Tes Vav Amud Beis, wait 1 second. Does Rabbi Yossi really hold that we view her as a Zava Ketana in the morning and a Zava Gedola in the afternoon? After all, Umi Savara Rabbi Yossi Hachi V'Atanya. We have a brisa that says not like that. And you have to follow the language here. V'Atanya Rabbi Yossi Omer, Zav, which is a man, Bal Shtei Re'iyos, Sheshachto V'Zarku Allah B'Shvi, V'chein Shomer Yom Keneged Yom, Sheshachto V'Zarku Aleha, V'Achar Kach Ro. In these 2 cases, one of a man, one in a woman, where the next Re'iyah that they see will be the one that makes them Tameh. Even though retroactively, when they become the Zav Gdola or the Zav Gadol, retroactively we look at everything they sat on, everything they put their weight on, and we say that they're Tmeim Lemafreya, Petur Milasos Pesach Sheni. What do we see going on here? We have a din lemafreya by when it comes to tumas mishkav umoshav. Mishkav umoshav is like this: if a person is a zav and they take their weight and they press down on a couple of mattresses, all the mattresses become tamei. All of them are tamei. What did we just learn here? Retroactively, if in the evening you became a zav gadol or a zav gdola, what was the truth in the morning? Retroactively, you were a zav gdola in the morning. That's not Rabbi Yossi. The Rabbi Yossi that we saw said, no, the morning is Zava Ketana and the afternoon is Zava Gedola. Now you're telling me that there's a retroactive status. That's not Rabbi Yossi. So says the Gemara, you're absolutely right. And the Gemara responds, my lemafreya. What did Rabbi Yossi mean in this brisa when he speaks about lemafreya? Not mido raisa, only midrabanan. It's a rabbinic conjunction. But midoraisa, you were technically tahor, even retroactively. We're only metame mishkav umoshav midorabanan on a rabbinic level. And hachinami mistabra, it has to be that this is the case. Deisal kadaitach midoraisa, because if it was true that really lemafreya on a deoraisa level, we go back to what you sat on in the morning and say it's tmei midoraisa, that can't be. How do I know? Because what did the brisa say about the Korban Pesach Sheni? But there the Gemara said, "Amay p'turim lasos Pesach Sheni." If in fact the lemafreya was a din deoraisa, and really when she became a Zava Gedola at night, we look back in time and say those 3 days were Beretziva, she's a Zava Gedola, and that whole time was a period of time of Zava. We clearly don't say that. Why? Because she's pure from the Pesach Sheni. because she was not deemed midoraisa fully tmeya during that time. So we see that makes sense. And the Gemara says, Lolam eimalach tuma deoraisa. Maybe it may well be the case that in general we would have said that tuma is deoraisa. And we're trying to answer up our question here. Because it could be that there was tuma midoraisa, but tahom deziva hitiru. What is this? What's tahom deziva hitiru? So take a look at Rashi / Rivan, 12 lines from the bottom. Dibur hamaschal de tuma de tahom deziva hitiru. I didn't write this. I'm just reading it. This is what he says. Dekevan de beahi shaita de nishchat. At the time when they actually did the shchita, akati havakaima tipas dam b'makor shel isha. The blood that would be a ziva discharge for her was still in the uterus. V'lo yotzas lachutz, and it didn't leave her body yet. Ahani ba mixas hayom kikulo. It's an unbelievable thing to read. Because the blood is still in her body, it hasn't discharged yet. So right now, mixas hayom kikulo. The kiman de nishchat aleh b'shas ta'aradami. Even though in an hour that blood will leave her body, and then retroactively, you're right, all 3 days are buttoned up, and she's a zava gedola. But as it relates to the korban pesach and the din of mixas hayom kikulo, we say that amount of time between the second and third discharge, when the blood was in her body, in the uterus, but not discharged, that's when we apply the din of mixas hayom kikulo. Sounds very mechudash to me. Do we say that anywhere else? I don't know. Okay, that's what the Gemara means with tahom deziva hitiru.
Why do you know we only go with what we see? Right?
In Maseches Nida, the Mishnayos discuss how many episodes of trumos do we say are tahar when a woman becomes a nida. She became a nida. Do we look back me'es la'es? Do we look back maybe kita l'pekita? Remember that Mishnah there? We learned about this idea in Maseches Nida. How far do we look back and say, wait, we messed things up? A woman shows up to take care of the Torah. She's making challah, and she makes 40 challahs in a row. And on the 40th challah, she senses that she became a nida. And taka she did. So that's a machlokas tanei beis Shammai beis Hillel as to how we look at the retroactive status. I don't know if that's the Rice or the Rabbi. I don't know without looking. I have no idea. Okay. And by the way, says the Gemara, 8 lines from the bottom, getting to the end. Ve'af Raboshia savar lemafreya derabat midrabanan. He also held that way. Big challenges in the girsa here. This is not correct. It's not the Tanya. It should say de Amar Rav Oshia. Aval haroezav b'shvi shelo soser es shelafana. We'll go back to what he said in a second, but it cannot be the Tanya because Rav Oshia was not a Tana. He was an Amora, and he was a colleague of Rav Yochanan, as we'll soon see in the Gemara. So that's why the Rishonim here, even forget the Rishonim, everybody, it's just a clear error. It's not the Tanya. It's not a brisa. It's a statement from an Amora. So let's see what he said. I'll read it again with the corrections. The Af Rav Oshia savar lemafreya midrabanan. De Omar Reb Oshia, what does he say? Aval haroezav b'shvi shelo soser es shelafano. That he had said that if a person sees dam on the 7th day of their Shevanakim, it ruins es shelafano, it ruins it. But Amar le Rav Yochanan lo nistar ele yomo, it only ruins that day. So Rav Oshia seems to say it ruins all of Shevanakim. That's how we view it. If a woman sees a kesem that is worth, that's halachically valid, again, we know that if a woman is wearing white undergarments and she sees a kesem, the kesem has to, first of all, be larger than the size of a gris, which is the size of a U.S. penny. It has to be the right color. It has to be on material that's not makabel tuma, that is makabel tuma. It has to, like a whole set of rules. But if taka she does, it ruins her shevanakim. Here we're not saying that. What does Rav Yochanan say? Lo nisra el yom. It only ruins that last day of the count. And says the Gemara, what are you talking about? Manavshach, that makes no sense. Isasar, kulu sasar. If in fact there's a stira here, then the whole thing should be done. What is this 1 day stira? In ilo sasar, if it isn't a stira, then lo nistar v'lo yomo. Rav Yochanan, what are you talking about? Like, what kind of stira is there for only 1 day when it comes to Shevanikim? It should ruin everything or ruin nothing. You're right, but in regards to Rav Yochanan, says the Gemara, eleima lo nistar v'lo yomo. So Rav Yochanan was of the opinion that there is no stira at all. And Omar le. You need Rashi here at the bottom. Rashi says at the bottom, Amar le Rav Yochanan Rabbi Yochanan says, Rabbi Yossi koi kavasach. The Rabbi Yossi holds of your opinion. D'amar mikanu lahaba mitame. He says to Rabbi Yochanan, you must hold like him that you only become tamei from today, and it doesn't ruin the past. Says the Gemara, wait 1 second. How do we understand Rav Yossi's lemafreya? And now we're saying for the third time, and this time it's within the camp of Rav Oshia, so that we understand his shita, my lemafreya midrabanan. And that's how the Gemara understands Rav Yossi. Let me just summarize briefly what's going on so that we have things as clear as can be. Rav said this shita, that in regards to the case of our Mishnah, that the 70th day is viewed lakanu lakan. He's certainly not the author of our Mishnah. As we've shown, his comment was right in the beginning of the Gemara, and our Mishnah cannot be the author. We tried Abba Shaul from the case of Avelus, no comparison. Avelus is derabanan, and Rav is talking about it in deraisa. We found that Rav Yossi is a valid shita, but then we saw stira within Rav Yossi, because one case of Rav Yossi was clean cut, the other was lemafreya, and we said, don't worry, the case of Rav Yossi is a case that is only lemafreya midirabanan. Rav Oshia agrees. That brings us to where we are right now, 3 lines from the top of the page on Tezayin Amud Aleph, heading to the end of the parak. And says the Gemara, Rav Yossi Michti, we need to understand Rav Yossi's shita at all. How does this ever work? Savar mixas hayom kekulo. If in fact Rav Yossi is of the opinion that when it comes to a zava that there's even a metzias of mixas hayom kekulo, zava gemur demaisi korban hechi mishkachasla. If she sees blood at 9 a.m. every day for 3 days, so the Gemara says, what is the case where she'll ever see a korban? If you hold that mixas hayom kekulo, then once it's mixas hayom kekulo, then the morning is no longer zava gedolah. How do you create a scenario of a zava gedolah with korbanos? Because it's mixas hayom kekulo, which means on day 1, let's say she sees blood at 4 p.m. So the morning was not zava, and the afternoon is zava, and then the next day she sees at 4 p.m. again. So in the morning it's not zava, and in the afternoon it's zava. So it's always mixas hayom kekulo. You can never build 3 days. The Gemara gives, and then says the Gemara to finalize its question. Once you see only half of a day, the other half of the day, by definition, is a day of shomeres yom keneged yom. That's zavak katana status. So according to Rav Yossi, how do we ever create a scenario of a zavak gedolah bringing korbanos? Once you hold mixas hayom kekulo, there's no way to create that scenario. And the Gemara gives 2 answers. The blood doesn't stop. She's constantly bleeding for those 72 hours, and therefore there is no mixas hayom kekulo because she never stops bleeding. And this is a difficult answer. She saw all 3 days toward the end of the day, and there we didn't have a scenario where we could create shomeres yom keneged yom. This does require some rishonim, and if you take a look at the last Rashi, there was no time after she saw blood for that day to be a shomeres yom keneged yom, and therefore the whole first day is considered to be day 1, v'chule v'chule, and therefore we do have a scenario, or 2 scenarios, I should say, where a woman is able to become a zava gedolah with korbanos. Hadran Allah Hareni Nazir Baruch Hashem. We finished the 2nd parak of Maseches Nazir. He writes, we should come back to this daf in 7.5 years. Wishing you all a beautiful night.
I'd like to get